Welcome into college football conference previews. I am Drew Martin, joined by Robbie Veno of WagerTalk.com, and we're talking the ACC Conference, the Atlantic Coast Conference here, and the Atlantic side, which, Robbie, when you're talking the Atlantic Division here, it's Clemson and then kind of everybody else, NC State, BC, kind of getting some hayway, even Louisville. But, Robbie, I'll throw it over to you. What about some changes in this division? I mean, changes right from the top. We're talking about the number one overall pick quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, gone from Clemson, and his backup, DJ, coming in. But throw it over to you for your view on the important changes here in the Atlantic Division, Robbie.
Well, this is a stable conference overall, Drew, where coaching changes are concerned. There's not much to talk about. Most of these head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, alignments are the same as they were last year. There's one in particular here at Louisville, where Louisville lost their offensive coordinator, Dwayne Ledford. He went to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL. At the time, Drew, it was viewed as a major loss for Louisville. Not only was Ledford the offensive line coach, and a really good one at that, but he was really a player's guy, great recruiter on top of that. And Louisville knew they were going to lose him. He was actually a finalist for the Marshall head coaching job, didn't get it. Charles Huff of Alabama wound up getting that. But they replaced him with Jack Bicknell Jr., who's a 33-year vet of coaching. And actually, to your home turf, coached the offensive line at Auburn last year, coached Mississippi's offensive line 3 years before that. So, there's four starters returning. Maybe they run themselves here, but there is somewhat of a difference. And Scott Satterfield, in losing Ledford, winds up becoming his own offensive coordinator. So we'll see if that affects him at all, being head coach and offensive coordinator at the same time. But really, where this division is concerned, and this conference in general, coaching changes are quiet, everything pretty stable. Transfers we'll talk about real quick here, Drew. I'm going to turn it over to you because one of your guys, Mackenzie Milton here, the former Central Florida quarterback, UCF, now running Florida State, by all reports looked very, very good in the spring at FSU. So that could be a major bonus. He now the starting quarterback. Florida State, according to 247 Sports, top 150 impact transfers, Florida State has 6 of the top 80 on their roster this year. They lost some, but the plus minus really weighs in their favor. They got some real talent in here. A couple of other teams to note real quick here where transfers are concerned. NC State, who's looked at as the second choice in this division. They picked up a couple defensive secondary starters, one of those being an FSU product. Boston College, how about them? 3 of the top 150 recruits, again, according to 247 Sports, going to BC. And Clemson, they lost 3 of the top 10, shows you how strong they are. But those are really the notable changes here inside the Atlantic Division as far as coaching and transfers are concerned.
Robbie, looking at the ACC coming into this, doing the research, one thing I noticed is 13 of 14 starting quarterbacks, at least a starting quarterback on the roster, is returning here, Robbie. The one that's not is actually Clemson, with Trevor Lawrence moving on. And we're seeing Clemson as a minus 800 favorite to win the ACC. Overall, the whole conference. And if you're new to sports betting, minus 800 means you have to risk $800, and if Clemson wins the ACC, you win $100. So that's only an ROI of a little over 12%, Robbie. For somebody else to hold on to my money for that long in that kind of return, I just don't think that makes sense, given an upset along the way. Clemson facing UGA against Georgia in Charlotte week 1. That's a huge game. Robbie, talking about the favorite here in Clemson, 1, do you think that they just roll through their schedule here undefeated? And 2, do you think there is a team, maybe a middle of the pack team, a dark horse, that could knock them off here in the Atlantic Division, Robbie?
Well, odds makers tell us, Drew, that NC State is probably your second choice. And NC State, certainly, they're as good as they've been in years. But the separation between they and Clemson, as I mentioned earlier, Clemson, as far as transfer players lost, they lost the number 5, the number 6, and the number 7 rated players to other teams, and still they march along. Goes to show you how good the recruiting is, how deep they are talent-wise. Their schedule Drew, is kind of tailor-made as far as ACC play is concerned for them to go the distance and get into the ACC title game. So it's hard to bet against them. Certainly an injury to the new quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, would impact them greatly. Backup quarterback is not a strength for this team, so you have to keep your starter healthy here. Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, those guys obviously gone. They have to make up for that, but the talent pool is so deep that they probably deserve to be an overwhelming favorite. For NC State, real quick, the second choice in all of this, quarterback Devin Leary, who got hurt after 5 games last year, is back and in good health this year. And NC State actually, as I mentioned earlier, probably has their best team in quite some time. And, if you go back to 2019, the last time those two teams played, Clemson won that game 55-10. So has NC State closed the gap by more than 45 points over the course of 2 years? That remains to be seen. The rest of the bunch, as far as beating Clemson for the division, it's not likely, but I'll give you a middle-of-the-pack team here, Drew, from an against-the-spread standpoint that I think will be good. And again, I think on a weekly basis, ATS-wise, we can bet NC State. That's going to be a good football team. They're asked to lay some big points against lesser competition in a couple of instances, but where ACC play is concerned, they're not an overwhelming favorite in hardly any game. I mean, minus 17. If we use it again, let's give a shout-out to our colleague Ralph Michaels, who played a big role in the Gold Sheets college football preview book. And Ralph actually lists all of his power ratings and what his projected lines are for these games. So if we use Ralph's numbers, which are very sharp, Clemson minus 17 over Syracuse would be the only time they're asked to lay double digits the entire year. So Clemson could be profitable. If Mackenzie Milton is healthy, Drew, Florida State could be a very profitable ATS team as well. Last year, they went through a lot of internal strife and then some opt-out problems in the first year under Mike Norvell. But it's the second year now. Systems are in, head coach is in, players are weeded out. They've got in the guys that they like. And again, if Milton is the player that he was at UCF, they could be a very dangerous team because they don't seem to be lined extremely pricey either. So I would leave you with those two as teams in the Atlantic that I think on a weekly basis, ATS, not necessarily the futures board, but point spread wise, week to week, I think you could make money with those two teams.
Robbie, I got one for you. Middle of the pack team to maybe keep an eye on here. Boston College, the Eagles, 2 NFL offensive linemen on the roster, returning the starting quarterback after his first year of being the starting quarterback. Of course, talking about the Notre Dame transfer here, the first offseason after being the starting quarterback. I like that kind of profile here. Lined at 7 wins, Robbie. I think Boston College going into their bye week should be 4-1. That gives them a win over Missouri and a loss to Clemson projecting out here, Robbie. And then with 6 games left after that, they get Florida State at home on November 20th. Talk about a cold atmosphere there in the Northeast, a bunch of Florida kids heading up there. That has quit written all over it. They get Virginia Tech home off of a short week, Wake at home as well. I could see Boston College going 8-4, if not better, kind of like in Boston College as a dark horse in the division. And then we got one more topic here, Robbie, to close it out. Team to fade in the division. It's tough not to look at Syracuse, Robbie. They've been bad for multiple years here. Dino Babers, he's going to need something to keep his job, I would think. Something, maybe lightning in a bottle here, Robbie. Does Syracuse have it? I guess they're my fade team. Florida State as well. Florida State had a lot of trouble last year, Robbie. If Mackenzie Milton and company can't kind of resurrect that, there was some quit on that team last season. So maybe Florida State is a candidate here, Robbie. What are you thinking team to fade in the Atlantic Division?
Yeah, Syracuse is the absolute low-hanging fruit, Drew. The point spread always being the great equalizer. They're going to be getting a ton of points because guys were able to come back due to the COVID season. You could get an extra year. Syracuse is one of a lot of teams that brings back a bunch of starters. Whether or not those starters are worthwhile this year, we will see. But certainly Syracuse is a team that you're not really running under any circumstance to bet your money on. We'll have to see how the season goes with them before we decide to bet on them. Fading them rather easy at this point in time. But I'm going to pick out of that middle of the pack group that we continue to refer to, and that's probably teams 2 through 6, right? But I'm going to pick on Louisville here real quick, because when I went through numbers, they're priced the same way as all these other teams. They're priced the same way as NC State. They're priced the same way as Boston College. They're priced the same way as Florida State. Yet, when I look at that bunch, I find Louisville to be the weakest of all of them. Defensively, they're going to be down this year, and the defense was miserable last year. I want to point out one thing real quick here for viewers of this video, that when you look at overall statistics from last year, and Louisville is a good case in point, Virginia Tech and the Coastal will be one as well, you have to remember that some of these games involved massive coronavirus absences. So you can't put all your stock in overall numbers. But Louisville had a bad defense. It doesn't look like the personnel is any better here. Their secondary and pass rush combo, which is so important nowadays. Rush the passer, stop the pass. They're bad at both of those. I could see them as a 4-8 against the spread team here. So I'll go with Louisville as my team to fade on a week-to-week basis again in the ACC Atlantic.
He's Robbie Veno. I'm Drew Martin. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Make sure to stay tuned to WagerTalk YouTube channel for other conferences previews, which we're doing throughout the summer. So guys, make sure to check out WagerTalk and Sportsmemo.com for a bunch of free betting advice. Thanks for tuning in. Best of luck with your bets.